Today you're going to hear from KPMG, who are presenting their work on sheep milk markets in Asia, a project funded by the Canterbury Development Corporation. You'll hear about value-added strategies from our largest sheep milk manufacturer, Blue River Dairy. Michael and Cressida McNamara, friendly visitors from Australia, and they'll be talking about Australian fine sheep cheese markets. And we'll be hearing from Wendy Hollingsworth about location branding and intellectual property claims. She will also be presenting the fascinating case of the fledgling sheep dairy industry in Barbados. We conclude this session with a presentation from our special Kingsmead guest chef, Mark Soper, who's going to be cooking up a storm of sheep milk dishes in the sheep milk New Zealand kitchen to the right of us. So without further delay, I can introduce you to Patrice Feary and Simon Hunter of KPMG to discuss sheep milk products for the Asia markets. We will take questions at the end of the entire morning's presentation, so hang on to your thoughts.
Thank you, Janet. Firstly, I'd like to extend a thanks to you as an industry for providing us with a platform to share a recent piece of work commissioned by the Canterbury Development Corporation. It's our privilege to present this on behalf of CDC, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank many of you who have contributed to this report along the way. All signals indicate that we are entering a period of unprecedented change in global agri-food systems. Each week, we observe companies with globally recognised household brands, as well as new technology startups, making investments to redefine that we understand as food and disrupt how products are grown. How they're grown, how they're processed, distributed, and consumed. The only constant for the next decade or more will be change. The organisations likely to thrive will be those with the agility to respond to the opportunities that disruption creates. The environment of constant change provides the backdrop of this analysis of the opportunities available to the Canterbury region and the sheep milking sector. The clear message from our analysis is that while the potential exists to create a New Zealand sheep milking sector of relevant scale, this will only be achieved if the new industry is built from the consumer backwards. Being prepared to invest in developing a deep understanding of markets, and more importantly, the people that will ultimately consume the product is a critical first building block in creating a high-value industry. The report starts this journey for the Canterbury region. The report highlights the potential inherent in sheep milk in just a few possible markets. The challenge for the Canterbury region is whether there is sufficient foresight to see how the region could participate in this emerging sector, and the game changers with their commitment and resources to realise the potential. Sheep milking is in its infancy in New Zealand. A handful of commercial farms have been developed, but much more lies ahead to shape high-value niche markets for New Zealand sheep milk products and to build a production sector with sufficient scale to consistently supply high-quality products to these markets. While this means the industry comes with While this means the industry comes with the investment risks associated with any new startup venture, it also provides pioneers the opportunity to build an industry designed from the ground up, to own the critical junctions of the value chain, ultimately enabling them to capture more of the value their milk creates. Economic growth is critical for Canterbury Development Corporation to achieve its vision of the Canterbury region being recognised as the best place in Australasia for business, work, study and living by 2031. Effective water management has been identified as a priority. With its relatively low impact on water quality than dairy cows and potential return on investment, sheep milk could enable long-term economic growth whilst playing to Canterbury's traditional strengths of sheep production and research and development. A key component of success is ensuring there is a path to market for interested farmers, producers, export marketers, and other stakeholders within the value chain. Demonstrating a viable path forward where opportunities in specific countries are identified will build confidence for stakeholders in Canterbury and encourage investment into the sheep milking industry. The objective of this report was to answer two fundamental questions. How attractive are the proposed target markets for sheep milk product producers? And secondly, can New Zealand firms producing sheep milk products compete in these markets? This was achieved through analysis of each target market for its potential and attractiveness, its analysis of potential product opportunities in selected markets, and developing and applying an appraisal criteria to market entry options. So sheep milk, how big is it?
Thank you. And just introducing myself, Simon Hunter, partner in KPMG, and I should remind you that this is Patrice. Does a lot of our markets work around the food sector, tends to work from the customer back to where the production happens, so very much in that supermarket space. I guess in terms of this presentation, we've done the work. It's providing you with insights into the market and the opportunities that might be there. It's providing you with a view that may be looking 2-3 years out. It's in the very early stage. And I guess in terms of the conversation around the tables and around the coffee stand, very much I hear that word infancy. So where do you sit in the market? And I think I just want to give a quick framework as to where you are, and just a reminder that from a global context, you are supplying into a 17 billion, I think that's got a slightly, I've got 13 billion, depends how you define it, but a $17 trillion industry. In terms of that industry, dairy probably makes up 10 to 15%, depends on how you define it. In terms of dairy production, total dairy production now is sitting around 700 million tonnes. Now, in terms of sheep milk, you're a slither of that. So you're a slither of a slither. So sheep milk is about 10 million tonnes. The biggest player in that space now is probably China, with close to 10% of that. So that gives you an idea of where you are. The one message we want to get in terms of presenting this is you're always going to be a niche player, but in that $17 trillion market, we're starting to see some opportunities, and that's where Patrice will come back in, that provide you insight into the opportunities. So we know that demand keeps growing 1 to 2%. We know that industries are blurring. So what you're seeing now, when you look at your role as an industry, you're seeing the blurring between food, health and pharmacy, which provides opportunities associated with your product. We know that in everything we're doing in food, we are now adding complexity at the edge of our standard food product. So we're seeing complexity come in from the consumer and what sort of attributes they demand, what form they want it, where they want it, how they want it. And the other thing we know in terms of looking at the industry in context for you is that some of these industries are moving at very different rates. So your nutraceuticals will be moving at growth rates of 10% per annum. If you look at functional foods, which is probably the space that sheep dairy could fit into most, that'll be growing at 4, 5, 6% per annum. So there's lots of opportunity in there, and that's the context. So I think you need to just frame it up, Patrice. our message really, this gives you insight into where that industry has opportunities. And it's interesting, I went for a quick shop last night. I grabbed a couple of products. I just want to put this in perspective. You know, we've got dairy, you get paid as a farmer for milk about 40, 50 cents, whatever it is, per litre. That little bottle there was $12 a litre. I bought that last night at Foodies. He's a mate of mine. He's making incredible profit out of these games. $112 a kg. That's in New Zealand. $12 a litre. So there's plenty of opportunities. Those other products, I'm not going to go into too many, but that's about $35 a kg. If you look at the products we looked at just in New Zealand, you've got about a 10-fold range in the price per litre that it's being sold. So think about that as you work your way through today. Patrice, back to you.
Thanks, Simon. So now just to take a look at the markets and products that we analysed in this research. They were selected based on researching emerging consumer trends and behaviour, as we've alluded to, in conjunction with and in discussion with key industry players, operators, food and beverage experts, current export manufacturers and CDC. 9 countries were in scope, based on their potential and attractiveness. They were Japan, Taiwan, Malaysia, Thailand, the Philippines, the USA, and specifically California, Singapore, Vietnam, and South Korea. Presented in this table is a summary of market attractiveness for these stated markets. It's based on the selected criteria of ease of access, economic considerations and consumer demand. Each key influence within the criteria has been ranked out of 10, with 10 being attractive and 1 being less so, a deterrent. The aim was to focus on emerging Southeast Asian markets, Malaysia, Singapore, Philippines, Thailand and Vietnam, as they are part of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, the economic community, which represents the 7th largest economy in the world, with a combined GDP of nearly $2.4 trillion. It's expected to become the 4th largest economy in the world by 2050. The information from the table has then been aggregated visually on this graph to assist in determining the markets to analyse further. The rankings are based on professional judgment in conjunction with a review of industry information, in-country experts and New Zealand exporters, among many other sources. In general, market access for sheep milk is similar to that of cow milk products, as milk products are covered by the same chapter of the Harmonised System tariff codes. From our initial analysis, From our initial analysis of the 9 countries, Taiwan, Singapore and California were selected as focused and prioritised markets for the research. These were identified as the markets most appealing based on consumer trends and wealth, trade barriers and also the fact of ease of doing business for sheep milk-based products. The selections were also made in conjunction with food and beverage, trade and industry experts. So for a little more detail on each of the focused and prioritised markets, firstly, I'd like to talk to you about California. As the world's largest, most complex and technically advanced economy, the USA is an important source of innovation, research and investment. The USA is New Zealand's 3rd largest individual trading partner, and there continues to be scope for further development. It's a major market for agricultural products and New Zealand's largest market for frozen beef and protein. It's also a significant source of foreign direct investment, innovation, research and tourism. The USA, California specifically, which has similar trends, tastes and preferences to other US West Coast markets, is recognised as an early adopter of new products and a leader in lifestyles of health and sustainability, the segment or the demographic referred to as the LOHAS. The demographic has an interest in sustainable living, green, ecological initiatives, and is characterised by a relatively wealthy and well-educated population. This said, the TPP was still active at the time of researching this report. However, recent election results in the USA have made it clear that the TPP will not be ratified. Nevertheless, the Californian market presents a significant opportunity for the industry, perhaps more medium than short term. In order to penetrate this market, there will need to be a continuous supply. This is unlikely given the current New Zealand production levels, which many of you are far more aware of than I, and the mix of products that we currently have on offer. This is expected to change as volume increases over time. Even with the current tariffs on sheep milk-based products, the premium end of the market remains viable. California contains a particular market segment that emphasises sustainable living, where there is strong social media influence on what people buy. Consumers in the US place a high value on online presence of consumer products, and this will be an important consideration for any exporters into the state. Consumers have a strong appetite for milk, as California is the leader in raw milk production and the largest producer of almonds worldwide. The Californian consumer is familiar with and open to milk alternatives. Consumer tastes have shifted from trans fats to products high in saturated fat, and sheep milk aligns this profile. Dairy is popular in the USA, accounting for 15% of fresh food sales, 16% of packaged food sales, and 15% of organic food sales. So moving a little bit closer to home, to Singapore, a less established market for sheep milk products. However, both sheep cheese and goat milk have a presence in this market already, indicating that sheep milk products are a viable option for Singapore consumers. A strong emphasis on country of origin, quality and convenience has allowed New Zealand to capture 32% of Singapore's dairy imports, providing an excellent platform for sheep milk. The Singapore market offers clear tariff advantage with a fair trade agreement eliminating all tariffs. The import and sale of sheep milk products is governed by the Sale of Food Act and the food regulations under the Agri-Food and Veterinary Authority of Singapore, and importers must comply with AVA's regulations and labelling requirements. Ranked by the ANZ in the top 5 Asian countries, Singapore has an attractive and growing market. This ranking included the state of development, which is a useful indicator of the country's westernised consumer preferences, and thus whether there will be demand for New Zealand's product mix and value-added products such as sheep milk. Singapore's food market had a strong recent growth rate of 12%. Given New Zealand's relatively limited supply capacity, the smaller size of Singapore market makes it attractive. The rise in working women and single professionals have led to a growth in demand for convenience foods and ready-to-cook prepared meals. Singapore has a high level of food consumption and expenditure on New Zealand origin products. Consumer purchasing in Singapore is also incredibly healthy, with consumers enjoying a high degree of affluence. They are willing to spend more on premium packaged goods, which they perceive to be healthier than standard items. Parents are also choosing higher quality products with enhanced natural qualities for their children. This will help sheep milk products to be successful as they are sold at a premium, differentiating and doing this through meeting the market through education. Sheep milk products therefore require a degree of affluence to be successful. Looking to goat milk, as we have discussed, as a proxy, and seeing that it is a very small percentage of total drinking milk sales in Singapore, high-value nutritional products such as yogurt, ice cream, and infant formula may provide some more viable volume opportunities for sheep milk products in this market. To take a look briefly at Taiwan. Taiwan, there is a strong market demand for sheep milk infant formula already in Taiwan, and New Zealand suppliers are already finding success in this market. Some of you in the room now. The market is undersupplied and products are sold at a premium. Maintaining a premium market position is an important determinant of success. Taiwan's limited agricultural capacity means there is strong reliance on imported food and beverages. Competition tends to be with other imported brands. The $4 billion market of nutraceuticals and health products is mostly supplied by imports. ANZTEC is a comprehensive trade agreement that liberates and facilitates trades of goods and services and investment between our two markets. This will result in the removal of tariffs over time on 100% of New Zealand current exports to Taiwan. While the agreement took force late in 2013, on issue virtually all New Zealand dairy exports, including milk powder, cheese and butter, became duty-free. After a period of 12 years from coming into force, tariffs of New Zealand liquid milk will be eliminated. We are the largest supplier of dairy products into Taiwan. In addition, meat, fruit, seafood and forest products are very popular with the Taiwanese. Given the fat content of sheep milk is much higher than the other dairy products, there is the potential for trans fat levels to exceed current regulated levels. The characteristics of sheep milk need to be explained to Taiwanese regulators in order for them to understand the rationale for these exceeded levels. Leadership in the market, education of the consumer and of the customer is key. It's key and it's required to explain the difference between bovine and goat and sheep products. The benefits of sheep milk, a clear value proposition to customers and consumers, needs to be articulated in a way that resonates and translates into a premium price point. Taiwanese consumers spend a lot of time on New Zealand orientated products. It also has a high dependency on food imports and already conducts a high level of bilateral trade with New Zealand. Importantly, levels of both fat and protein consumption are high. The qualities of sheep milk products with their high fat and protein, therefore, may be well suited to this market. We'd like to now just take a quick look at the value chain on the premium products of sheep milk. How are we for time?
We'll skim this slide. It tells you the obvious. It tells you that if you're a farmer and you get paid $1 for the product, there'll be anything from $10 to $20 in the market that your other partners will be participating in. The trick in terms of being in an early stage in an industry like this is to ensure that you participate in the whole value chain from day one, rather than setting yourself up in an industry where you're staying and focused on that $1. So let's cut that one short.
So to leave you with some key messages, the future of food favours products with specific attractive attributes where they can be communicated and authenticated. We have spoken about this in the last 15 minutes or so. We need to ensure that the products that we are putting to market are truly authentic, they meet the needs of the end consumer, they are understood and are clearly received and are clearly differentiated in their current repertoire and their current offering. We need to make sure that we are focused on where the short-term priorities are for the industry. So while we looked at 9 international markets, There are a number of pieces of the jigsaw yet to be put together for the sheep milk industry, one of which is supply. So we need to be focused on where some short-term opportunities are, both from a consumer and market fit, but where we can also meet the demand or some of the demand in terms of volume. So we prioritise Taiwan and Singapore as those short-term target markets. On the back of that, California. A key challenge is to get viable and relevant scale where the industry can engage with the market. So as I've alluded to, we need to ensure that you as an industry are focusing on bringing the scale bringing the volume through in the actual animal, and that the sheep production and volume is there so that we can indeed meet the market demand. And these two pieces of the jigsaw, with a number of others in terms of viable commercial model moving forward, actually come together and align so that you can actually maximise the opportunity.
Skip that last page.
Skip that one. Yep.
I realise we're running for time. I think the one last comment was really that in your infancy, in this early stage, as you have your discussion over the next couple of days, I've already heard chicken and egg probably 4 or 5 times since I've been here, in terms of how do we get to a viable scale that is relevant for us to then go and test the market properly and work that out, and how do we do that collectively. So that's an important discussion to have as you go through the day. Patrice, I think, have we got time for a couple of questions? Yep. Okay, thank you.